The Warriors had an incredible game one victory. All it did was confirm what the true experts covering this team have been saying for a long time now. But we got a game two. I mean, it's only one game in a 7-game series. Connor Letourneau, he covers the Warriors for the San Francisco Chronicle. He's literally an insider. He knows his stuff. Connor, how you doing? And are you ready to go, my man, to discuss game two and recap game one?
Very ready. Let's do this.
Beautiful. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON, Con_Cron. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRocho. Connor, Game one was a thriller. If you're a member of Dub Nation, you have nothing but smiles on your face after that game. What did you take away from that? Give us your recap, sir.
I mean, incredibly impressive performance from the Warriors. I think a lot of times, as I'll call ourselves pundits, quote unquote, it's really easy to focus on the negative. It's really easy to focus on the what ifs, the weaknesses, the holes. But the reality of the situation is that this team was not fully healthy, really, at any point all season.
Correct.
And we saw a team that you can make the argument wasn't even fully healthy in game one because Steph wasn't at 100%, wasn't near his full workload. And they
True.
were just absolutely dominant. I mean, you're seeing this team's potential. You're seeing what this team can be. And for me, it was like a little bit of a sneak peek of their ceiling. And when Jordan Poole is going the way that he was going in game one, and Draymond is the force on both sides of the ball that he was, they're almost impossible to beat. And it
Agreed.
really solidified in my mind that they're not going to have serious issues with Denver. I mean, yes, it was just one game, and I don't want to be hyperbolic, but there's just not a world where this Denver team, in my mind, at this point, can seriously push the Warriors in a best of 7 series. And if the Warriors can just continue to replicate that type of performance, there's no reason why they shouldn't be in the legitimate conversation for a title.
No, agreed. No, I've been saying this since August on paper, and even with the Wiseman injury. I mean, look, he hasn't played all year, so it's not like, I mean, they started 18-2 without Clay. They were 27-6 on Christmas Day after they easily beat the Phoenix Suns in Phoenix, convincingly at that. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't consider them among the favorites. I never, for once, stopped saying that. I apologize for gloating, but as my position hosting this program, I have to kind of remind people, look, man, there's a reason why I'm hosting this thing. I know the Warriors. I analyze this team. I observe this team as close as anyone possibly can. This is not that far removed from the 5-year dynasty, and they have a lot of core pieces still in place. And you're right, as long as Steph is healthy, as long as Draymond is healthy, Clay's looking fantastic. Now the pool party is erupting, which is absolutely incredible. Connor, here's one thing that stuck out to me, which really it completely glossed over me until the morning of game one, maybe the day before, which is that we criticize this Warriors team for being small, and I think in a lot of ways justifiably so. But the counterpoint to this, and maybe this is what Bob Myers' grand vision was, along with Steve Kerr, is that Nikola Jokic, who's almost undoubtedly going to win MVP. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind. Certainly, it seems obvious that's the way it's going. As good as he is offensively, he has holes on the defensive side of his game. And you hide those holes in a lot of ways by simply having him cover other huge lumbering big men, right? It's easy to cover someone who's similarly large and who's similarly center. The Warriors don't have anyone like that. Kevon Looney's the closest thing. And I think if I'm looking at the box sheet right now, he played a grand total of 13 minutes, which means that I think even Kerr realized, okay, as long as Looney's not playing, Jokic is actually a stain on that roster because he can't defend anyone. Do you agree with that? Are you seeing that as well? Like, what do you think about the defensive lapses of the Nuggets, including Jokic?
Yeah, they did a great job exploiting him, putting him in uncomfortable positions. I think that a big reason why Jokic was, I would say, at least middling defensively in terms of his numbers and some of the analytics this season was because the Nuggets did a really good job of hiding him and putting him in good positions defensively. But the Warriors, I thought, completely out game planned Denver in game one, both offensively and defensively, and they just did a really good job of putting Jokic exactly where he didn't want to be and
Yep.
putting him on an island and just going right at him. And then I was incredibly impressed by the Warriors' defensive game plan on Jokic. It wasn't really anything that different than what a lot of us had expected, but they just executed it so well. And I had a conversation recently with Mike Brown, who's the defensive coordinator for the Warriors this year,
Yes.
and he was basically saying, look, I know a lot of people are talking about our lack of size, but the truth is size doesn't really matter that much in the NBA. In the modern NBA, what matters is length and being able to execute. And people
True.
forget. I know people say, oh, Draymond's just so smart and he's in the right place at the right time, and that's why he's so great defensively. That is all true. But he also has a 7'1" wingspan. People
Yep.
forget that.
Yep.
And that really allows him to, help put pressure on guys and force people like Jokic to take ill-advised shots and make those fadeaways even harder. And his defense on Jokic was so impressive, but it made it even better that the Warriors could not have Draymond on him the whole game. They also had like Gary Payton II on him. They had
Yep.
Andre. They had Belly. They had Looney. They had all those guys take some turns, which took some pressure off of Draymond. And in the critical moments, Draymond could really be at his best. And just brilliant job by Mike Brown, by Steve Kerr, the whole coaching staff.
Absolutely, man. And that's true, dude. You're right. The height is not as important as the length. Obviously, intelligence and teamwork comes into play. We've heard Kerr talk about playing on a string, having each other's backs. The team defense was sound. I mean, just to put it in perspective, like the Celtics, who are the number one defense this year, in large part due to Time Lord. And Time Lord's only 6'8", but he's a long dude. He's strong. And that's another aspect of Draymond's Green that might be underrated a little bit. You and I have spent time in that Warriors locker room. Seeing Draymond not as fully clothed as he is during a game, he's a physical specimen, dude. The guy is yoked. Like Iguodala's another example.
He is during the playoffs. I've never seen someone's body fat percentage fluctuate more during a season. But he always gets it trim and proper by playoff time. And I will give him credit. This season he's been in really good shape since the start of the season, which is why he got off to such a strong start to the season. And he's exactly where he wants to be physically. He kind of got through those rough patches toward the end of the season, regular season, and is where he wants to be mentally, emotionally, physically. And that is so important. I mean, Draymond is the epitome of a 16-game player. I mean, when I think of the word 16-game player, I only think of one player, and that is Draymond, because there's not another player I can think of whose game goes to such a different level in the postseason. This is a guy whose entire game is predicated on stakes. And
you're absolutely right.
When it gets to this environment, he's just like a different dude. I mean, he was really good at times in the regular season, but I thought game one the other night was probably his best performance all year. And there's no reason to think he can't keep that up.
You're absolutely right, dude. Even Steve Kerr has mentioned himself that during the 2 years of the malaise following the 5-year NBA Finals run, where Draymond Green is just hard to get him engaged when the games don't count. And it's just, he's at that point in his life. He's a future Hall of Famer. I don't think there's any doubt of that at this point. He's just one of the all-time greats. There's not much left to be said about that. And I love his self-awareness, dude. Like, even when he was struggling when he first came back from the injury, he went on his podcast, or it wasn't his podcast. He was saying in a post-game press conference, I think, that, look, man, I don't remember ever being the reason our team sucked, but I'm the reason right now. Like, his self-awareness is incredible. It's admirable. I respect it tremendously.
I have written before that Draymond Green's greatest quality, period, is his awareness.
Yeah,
on the court, off the court. He is so good at just like lurking near a play and then pouncing right when it's the exact right time. And if you look at like some of his defensive possessions against Jokic, he didn't do anything like crazy physically. He was just reading situations perfectly in the right place at the right time. His
Yep.
verticality was on point. There was that one play, I think it was toward the end of the first quarter, where Jokic is trying to post up Draymond on the block, and he goes up, and with that 7'1" wingspan, just straight up in the air, there was nowhere for Jokic to go, so he ended up like turning around and like doing a 360, and like looked all awkward, and then he just throws up this like horrible shot, and it's like
Yep.
Draymond's not doing anything crazy, but it's just he's doing it perfectly, you know?
He is. He's just the master at his craft, man. That's all there is to say about that. And the Warriors are up 1-0. And look, man, Draymond's eating his Built Bars. That's all I got to say about that. He's in tip-top physical shape right now. I think Bielitsa's eating his Built Bars too. And Built Bars, for those of you that aren't familiar, if you're a new viewer of this program, Connor, you love these things, right? You've had them a bunch of
Yeah.
times.
I've been on this. You remember a few weeks ago I texted you a picture of me eating a Built Bar because I've listened to this pitch so many times that I was like, I need to just go and buy some. I'd had a couple like when Wes Goldberg was on the beat, and I was like, I need to go buy some. So I actually ordered them online, and I've been wanting to talk to you about them because I went through a whole box recently, figured out what my favorite flavors are. Yeah, I definitely like some more than others, but yeah,
Yes,
it's
yeah.
a great protein bar for sure.
Well, what are your favorite flavors? Because I'm cookies and cream, and there's like a chocolate caramel I really like too. What do you do?
Yeah, my favorite honestly is the coconut almond. It tastes exactly like an Almond Joy.
There you
Like it
go.
literally tastes exactly like an Almond Joy.
Bam.
It's amazing.
And these things, they are amazing, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, 100% real chocolate. These are low-calorie, high-protein protein bars with 17 grams of protein in each bar. I always say they make you feel full when you're hungry. And given it's only a 240 calorie, or I'm sorry, 130 calories for each one, it's an amazing snack. Just go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, and get 15% off your order of these amazing protein bars. Again, use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. And today's show is also brought to you by Athletic Greens. I don't know if you've had these before, but Athletic Greens sells the AG1, which is pure nutrition simply in a glass of water. You just get a scoop, you put it in a glass of water in the morning on an empty stomach. I had my buddy Tony Ryan on last week with me, who drinks these things every day. Every morning he starts his day. It increases your acumen, it increases your digestive health, it increases your immune system. This is legitimately good for you. And it's just super easy. Again, all you do is just get a little scoop, you put it in a glass of water, you drink it on an empty stomach to start your day. You don't feel like nauseous or anything like that. Whereas most other things you put in your body on an empty stomach, these are just, it's a simple drink. And it's so good for you. It's, if you look at the ingredients, it is all legit. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NBA network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I don't know what's going on here. Well, thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. He's Connor Letourneau. You can follow him on Twitter at CON_CHRON, Con_Cron. What do you think in game 2, Connor, is going to be Malone's coaching strategy? That is the one thing I'm very curious about. I do have tremendous respect for him as a coach. And the one convincing win the Nuggets had this season, and when I say convincing, they beat them, I think, by a point, but it was still, for most of the game, this was on December 28th, the Nuggets had control of most of that game before the Warriors made a comeback at the end. And a little turd named Campazzo played 32 minutes in that game. He was suspended for game 1. He's been irrelevant in the roster the last few months. But it wouldn't surprise me if that little pest came out and was hounding Stephen Curry, was hounding Jordan Poole and the likes, because defensively he can be like annoying in that regard. But that's just a wild card. That might not happen. I have no idea what Malone's going to do. What are your thoughts about what Denver is going to do and maybe needs to do here in game 2?
I think it's going to be really hard because I think a lot of what the Warriors did in game 1 is very replicable.
Yes.
And so I think it's almost impossible for Michael Malone, assuming the Warriors continue to execute and play as cleanly as they did in game 1. If I'm Michael Malone, I'm just getting creative. I'm just like, look, we are not as deep as this team. We're not as talented as this team. I'm just going to throw some shit on the wall and see what sticks. I'm going to pull a little bit of a Nick Nurse and just get a little crazy. Maybe some box and one action, like just this things like that, The problem is that Steph Curry is not the only elite offensive player on the Warriors. So,
right.
Jordan Poole has, since the All-Star break, been a better offensive player than Steph. So, which is crazy. By the way, like quick aside, not a finalist for most improved player? What the hell?
I was going to touch on that. Let's touch on it now, dude. You're right. What the hell is going on, dude? How is Jordan Poole not at least a finalist? What do you think, man? You actually have had votes for all these awards. Like, what is going on in the media members' heads that they did not make him a top 3 finalist for MIP?
I think that, in my personal opinion, I think that it seems like a lot of people look at the most improved player award different than I think the intention of the award, and at least how I look at the award. I underscore and underline the word improved. To me, it's about where you started and where you ended. Okay.
Yes.
This is a guy, Jordan Poole, who was in the freaking G League last year. Okay. Who a lot of people thought was not an NBA player a little over
Myself
a year
included,
ago.
Man.
Okay.
I'm guilty of that.
And
I'm guilty.
Now he's a borderline all-star franchise cornerstone about to justifiably land like $100 million contract. Okay. Who else in the past year has had a trajectory even close to that? The guy who is almost definitely going to win the award is Ja Morant, who was a borderline he went from borderline all-star to superstar. Okay. He did get better, but he was starting so high that the gap between borderline all-star to superstar is not even close to the gap between almost out of the NBA to borderline all-star.
Right.
So, I mean, for him to not even be in the top 5 is insulting and just doesn't make, or top 3, I mean, is insulting and doesn't even make sense.
Agreed, man. Agreed.
He should
100% agree.
To me, he should be most improved player, but at the very least, he should be in a finalist, and he's not even a finalist. So
it's absurd. I mean,
and all three finalists are like all-star guys. Ja Morant, Darius Garland, and DeJounte Murray. I mean, I think of CJ McCollum when he won the award. He kind of had a similar trajectory as Poole. Like he went from like a back-end rotation guy to like the number 2 player on the team in 1 year. He was a very deserving winner that year, and Poole's kind of done the same thing. So why shouldn't he get it?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And you're right. I think that is ultimately what it comes down to is people, these media members who have a vote have lost perspective on what this award means. And you're right, it's improvement. Like Ja Morant does not embody the spirit of this award, which is somebody that a year ago was not making waves, that you would not expect to be where they are now. And Jordan Poole, it just got robbed. And I do hope that he takes this as a motivating factor and just simply excels his product on the court even more, because the potential is limitless for this guy. It's incredible. And we do need to touch on him a little more after we give some love to betonline.net. They are your number 1 source for all your betting stats and sports information. In fact, I'm going to betonline.net right now because I'm curious to see what the line is for tonight's game. Game 1, the Warriors are favored by 6.5. They easily covered that. I don't know if many people were picking them to easily cover a 6.5-point spread, but they did. And the spread tonight is -7 in favor of the Warriors. The over-under on this game is 222. Any thoughts on that, Connor? If you were a betting man, I know you're not, but if you were, what would you bet? Do you feel strongly about any of that?
You cut out for a sec. What was the spread?
No worries. Warriors -7. And so they're favored by 7 points, and the over-under total points is 222. Any feelings on either of those?
I would bet for the Warriors to beat the spread. I know that there's some risk there because often when a team is blown out in game one, they come back and at least make things competitive in game two. But I honestly think that the Warriors are so much better than this Nuggets team when they're fully healthy. Keep in mind too, this Nuggets team is without two of their three best players. So got to give the fact that they're even in this position is impressive, and why Jokic is probably going to be MVP. But I just think when the Warriors are at home that they're not going to be seriously threatened by the Nuggets. I could see the Nuggets stealing a game in Denver, maybe one, but I mean, who's even the Nuggets' second best player right now?
Morris, maybe.
Monty Morris. I guess Aaron Gordon, but Aaron Gordon has never scared me at all.
No,
he's not a great shooter. Yeah.
I would say Will Barton would probably be your second best player. He's a very under the radar player, but you're right. He doesn't make waves. He's not going to be a difference maker in this series.
Will Barton's a guy who should be like on a really good team, like your fifth best player, sixth best player.
Yes.
not your second best player.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I'm with you. We're on the exact same page. While I feel strongly the Warriors will win this game, and I'm still sticking with Warriors in 5, maybe 4. They could pull off the sweep. Game 2s typically after a blowout are close, and Mike Malone, I just give him too much credit. I think he's going to scheme something to make this a little more tricky. But again, if you want the information, just go to betonline.net. They're your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. BetOnline, it's where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day, free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON, Con_Cron. Dude, let's talk about the pool party, man. The performance was just out of this world. It far exceeded expectations for most people. And here's a question for you, dude. And this is where I really think the Warriors have struck gold, and I really believe they're the favorites to win the title, despite the Suns and how marvelously they've been playing. This league is just, parity has really taken over the NBA.
Yeah.
And they're, in my opinion, just at a different level. But then I also think the Warriors are at a different level above them. But how can any team stop this new big three? And there's a poll. If you follow the Locked On Warriors Twitter account, it's at Locked On Dubs. There's a poll there right now that asks, what should the nickname be for this new trio of Steph, the Pool Party, and Klay Thompson? I'm leaning towards Splash Party. I'm digging it. But besides that point, how can any team stop that triumvirate, each of which could score anytime they want? They're three of the best shooters in the game. How can anyone stop them?
To answer your first question, Tim Kawakami, he came up with Hampton's 5, and in his column the other day, he threw out a couple ideas for this new lineup, and I think the one I liked was Death Pool. I liked that one.
That is a good,
personally.
That is a good one.
But
that is a good one.
That's the best one I've heard so far. But the thing that makes this lineup so special is, and one of the reasons why I'm so high on Poole at this point, is not just because Poole is a borderline elite scorer, but he plays really well with Steph and Klay. I mean, he's like almost the perfect complement to how they play. He's almost like a hybrid in a lot of ways between the two. Like, he's a really good catch and shoot guy, but he's also a really good ball handler, and he moves off the ball really well. And he's got like that swagger, and honestly, and then, I know a lot of people have been down on Wiggins, but like, if that guy's your fourth best option on the floor, Like, that's pretty freaking tough. Like,
Damn right.
there for a lot
Damn
of his
right.
career, Andrew Wiggins has been the number one option on his team, and he's the fourth best scorer in that lineup. And then you also have Draymond, who's an elite facilitator. I mean,
Yep.
it's it might be like my favorite lineup I've seen from the Warriors going back to 2015, which is saying a lot. I just love the mix of youth and experience. And to answer your question, I don't really know how you defend that. I mean, you could be because I mean I'm not paid Steve Kerr money for a good reason. I don't know
Right.
basketball on that level, but the thing about it is you can't really afford to send double teams toward anyone because you're going to get exploited. So you kind of just have to hope that you can defend guys one-on-one well enough to hang in there, because there's so many different guys that can hurt you.
It's almost unfair that the Warriors score. I can't look, man. This is the most critical I've ever been of Kerr and Myers in their entire run with this organization, and I think a lot of the criticism was justifiable. But in the grand scheme of things, look, the regular season to the Warriors is just the preseason for now, and for them to find Jordan Poole in the draft, and for them to just draft as effectively as they have these last 5+ years, given how low these first round picks are. Bravo. I don't know what else to say to that because
Here's the thing about that draft is like, I think understandably Bob Myers gets a lot of credit for that pick, as he should. He took Poole, but if you remember at the time, the Warriors went into that draft basically deciding we need a shooter. They wanted like a catch and shoot guy, and that they were 100% going to get a shooter at that pick. Okay. And if you remember, a guy they really wanted was Dylan Windler out of Belmont, who I believe was taken just a couple picks before. And they had Dylan Windler above. My understanding is they had him above Poole on their board, and Windler was taken by Cleveland right before, and so they just went next on their board, and they're like, I guess we'll take Poole. Like, they liked him, but they didn't love him. They were just like, he's a decent shooter. Hit that big shot at Michigan. All right, it's 28th pick. We'll just see. All right, okay, here we go. And I think the interesting thing about Poole is that in his time in the NBA, he's shown that the pre-draft scouting report on him did not come close to illustrating what his full game is. Like, he's a really good ball handler. He's a really good facilitator. He's a really good, obviously a really good shooter. He can score at all three levels. I mean, the scouting report on him coming out of Michigan was like he was a catch and shoot guy, because that was how John Beilein, who I think is an overrated coach, utilized him at Michigan, and that's all Poole could really show. And if you talk to Poole about Beilein, he is not a Beilein fan. He felt like he was not properly utilized at Michigan, and you can't blame him, because it's clear that his game is so much more expansive than he was able to show in college.
He's a complete package. Beilein, first of all, I think didn't he end up coaching the Cavaliers for like half a year, and then they realized what a disaster of a decision that was.
Worst, one of the biggest nightmare NBA coaching stints I've ever seen. Yeah,
it was. Nightmare. It was, man. But it's just kudos to the organization for finding this gem in Jordan Poole, look, the Death Pool is a great nickname. Splash Party. I mean, the Splash Trio. I'm gonna have Brian Witt. He's coming on Wednesday. He came up with the Splash Brothers moniker for the Warriors. I'm curious to see what his insights are going to be on that. Look, man, this is if you're Dub Nation, you have every right to be exuberant. You have every right to be excited. Granted, it's only one game. There's a long series to go. I think Connor, you and I both are predicting it's going to be a closer game. What about the rest of the NBA? Why do you have a second to talk about I'm very curious to get your insights on that next Celtics game yesterday. That was a thriller.
Yeah. I was kind of off the grid yesterday. I was doing the Easter thing with the fam, but I did catch up on it. One of the game that was most interesting to me, honestly, was the Minnesota-Memphis game.
Oh, dude, let's get into that, please. Yeah.
I'm incredibly high on Memphis. I have been all year. And I know it's just one game, but like, man, Minnesota looked good.
Yes, he did.
Anthony Edwards is the freaking truth, man.
You brought up you brought up a point about Anthony Edwards, which I've been harping as well. The Warriors, and this is a lot of people I don't think realize this, that the Warriors could have had him. They when the Warriors had the number 2 pick and they ended up picking Wiseman, the one player above him was Anthony Edwards, and the Timberwolves were not really sold on anyone. Like they begrudgingly picked Edwards, and they were willing to trade with the Warriors and swap those picks. But the caveat was, I think the Timberwolves wanted the Warriors first round pick the following year, which ended up being Jonathan Kuminga. I believe that's why the Warriors didn't really go for it. But I don't know. I mean, you're right.
That pick was, that the Kuminga pick was Minnesota's pick, if you remember.
Correct. They wanted to pick back. They wanted their pick back. Yeah, that was the whole thing.
Right.
Yes.
My understanding is, I honestly think the Warriors might have been able to get that deal done with just giving their actual first round pick, which would have been more late first round, which I would have done.
Easily,
bro.
Easily.
It would have ended up being a late lottery pick, the pick that they got Moody with. To me, that's worth it. A 14 pick and the number 2 pick. I would have done that, but hindsight's 2020. But I put out that tweet the other day when he was going off in the play-in tournament, and I got some of the biggest backlash I've ever gotten on Twitter to a tweet.
I saw that. It was ignorance, dude. People were hating.
People were tagging me like, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, I'm like, and you do? Like I think a lot of people do forget that, like you said, like Minnesota was not that high on Anthony Edwards. I mean, they were very open to trading that pick. This was not like other number 1 picks where, to trade up, it's going to take a boatload of future picks and things like that. It was not that type of situation at all. And I think that if Minnesota had traded down, they probably would have taken LaMelo number 2, because they obviously didn't need a center with Karl Anthony Towns.
Right.
Which in retrospect is how the draft should have gone. Anthony Edwards and Poole, or Anthony Edwards and Ball should have been the top 2 picks. In whatever order, and then maybe Wiseman should have been like mid first round or something. But
no, who knows with Wiseman? Yeah, but
So it would have been a lot more doable. I know that there were inquiries made on Minnesota's part. The Warriors just ultimately were not sold on Edwards, and it was not. It was mainly because of I believe his mental makeup and stuff.
Correct.
My understanding is when he worked out for the Warriors had to be like, hey, can you try a little harder, please?
Well, that was his critique. That was the number 1 critique of him, is that he didn't care enough. He just wasn't. People were legitimately concerned if he really wanted to play basketball at the level of commitment that's required to be
he still talks about wanting to be an NFL player and things like that. And so I understand, the concerns from the Warriors standpoint of taking a number 1 pick and on someone like that. And whereas the flip side of that is Wiseman was the opposite in that he killed his interview. He killed his pre-draft workout. He had all the character things down. But on a certain level, when it comes to the NBA, athleticism reigns supreme. And you can't teach what Anthony Edwards has. He has a lot of Kuminga in him physically. He's going to end up being a better version of Andrew Wiggins. And that's just so I personally was like, I don't know why they aren't looking at trading up more.
I was for the record, and the receipts are there as well, man, from Twitter. How many years ago that was. I was a huge Anthony Edwards guy. I was praying that the Warriors made a move for him. But at the same time, in hindsight, look, man, 3 years later, it's like, where would he fit in right now? You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know where he'd play.
Yeah, and keep in mind too that his efficiency at Georgia was awful, and that was a big concern as well. But what I've come to realize is the college game just does not prepare guys well for the NBA. Someone like Anthony Edwards would have been much better served going to G League Ignite or going to Australia or something. I mean, he was he was put in a system that at Georgia that did not fit him at all. He was asked to play a point guard, which is not his position. I think Tom Crean is an overrated coach. He's unemployed for a
This
reason
is
right now.
Jim Harbaugh's brother-in-law, right? And you're right. He's got a lot of criticism as a coach.
And I mean, Anthony Edwards is an example of, like, to me, why college basketball is not necessarily the best path for these elite athletes, like the Kumingas of the world, the Jalen Greens of the world, the Anthony Edwards of the world. We just talked about Jordan Poole. If he had been in a better system in college, he probably would have been a much higher pick. One of the things that bothers me about college is these coaches who make millions of dollars a year will sell these 17, 18-year-old guys and tell them, yeah, I really care about you as a player and your development. And blah, 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 blah. That's all BS. Like, all they care about is winning games and their personal bottom line and getting their next contract.
Yep.
So if that means they have to play a guy out of position, if that means they have to, play him in an offensive system that doesn't play to his strengths, like, doesn't matter to them. And so that's why I'm kind of like down on college basketball from a development standpoint.
I hear you, man. I do think it does depend on the individual, right? Because the Stephen Currys and Klay Thompsons of the world thrive. But you're right, dude. A physical specimen like an Anthony Edwards, who just never really found a great fit at Georgia, he would be perfect for G League Unite. Who, by the way, I never knew this until just a few months ago, is based right here in Walnut Creek. I really had no idea.
I've been out there several times.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I learned this only because my brother-in-law, his family like owns a facility. Stephen Curry's summer camp
Ultimate Fieldhouse,
yeah, that same facility. And so I'm hoping we're going to do a summer show, and you're welcome to join me for that, to do a show in there when Curry's having his camp, and hopefully trying to get Curry on the show in the process. But that's for months down the road. Anyways, dude, always a pleasure, Connor, to have you on, brother. It's always a delight. Hope to have you on again very soon. And there was something else I wanted to touch on, and I'm not drawing a blank, but doesn't matter, man. The Warriors should hopefully win this game tonight. Oh, here's what I was going to say. I was just going to add that this Grizzlies Timberwolves series, the longer this goes, the better it is for the Warriors. Let these two just duke it out. Let it go 7. So whoever comes, this is just battle torn.
So, despite what I just said about Minnesota, like, I still think that Memphis is going to win that series, and it's going to be a Memphis Golden State second round, and it's going to be really fun. I'm already looking forward to Beale Street and the trip to Memphis, because Memphis is such an underrated NBA city, so it'll be fun.
True. Did you see those comments, by the way, from John Morant? Like, the only thing I don't like about him is he's got this arrogance to him. Like, he's got this. I know people, his lovers, his supporters call it swagger. I call it just, pure cockiness, and not in a positive light. Like, I don't know, man. Like, he literally came out and just said, they lost the game because they wanted to see the other team win. I know he's joking, and then he compared himself on Instagram to Michael Jordan. And it's like, dude, calm down. Try winning first. A few series.
He's got a chip on his shoulder. This is a guy who went to Murray State. I mean, that never leaves you, and so I get it. I mean, you remember his comments about Andre, and it seems like he kind of embodies the ethos of that whole franchise. Jaren Jackson's been very vocal on Twitter and Instagram. Kind of throwing shade at the Warriors. So has Brooks. That's from a reporting perspective, a writing perspective. I'm really looking forward to that series, just because there's going to be a lot of storylines. And look, I do not blame the Grizzlies for hating Andre Iguodala. Like, I would too. I mean, it's like, dude, you think you're too good for us, and we're better than you guys now. Like, our record is better than you guys. Like, screw you. Like, I get it.
I hear it. In Iggy's defense, this was 2 years ago when the Grizzlies were not any good. He was 36 years old at that point, at the approaching the end of his career, following a Finals MVP, the greatest 5-year run in history. I see both sides of it, but the fact that they're still holding this grudge,
I just don't believe that you should be able to just sit out games. Like, you're being paid millions of dollars, bro. Like, just go where if you want to retire at the end of the season. Like, that's just my personal opinion.
I hear you. A lot of people
it is a player-driven league, so player empowerment. But like, I just feel like, you're paid millions of dollars to play a game. Like, if you have to play it in a place that's not your preferred destination, suck it up. But that's just my personal feeling.
Yeah, I hear you on that. A lot of people agree, man. It's like he was being paid. I mean, that season was incredible. He made $16 million to just hang out in the Bay Area and play video games or whatever he was doing. Like it's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
He got away with it. I should say congratulations, Andre. Like you got paid $16 million to just kick back for a year. It's bravo,
as good of an NBA player as Andre is, he's a better negotiator, and like he would be the best player agent ever if he chooses to go that route. Like, he's incredible.
I'm with you, man. Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA. I was actually on that show last night. It should be available now from the first jump ball of the play-in tournament to the last possession of the finals. Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON, Con_Cron. You just published a great new piece on Jonathan Kuminga, and you literally are an insider. It's always a pleasure having you on, man. This door is open for you anytime you want. Yeah, we'll see how this goes tonight. Game 2, Warriors Grizzlies, favored by 7. Go Dubs, baby. Thanks, Connor. We'll talk soon, brother.
Appreciate it, man.